Public art can make a city come alive. It can express community values, enhance our environment, transform a landscape, and heighten our awareness. It's there for everyone. Stay tuned to find out about the many art treasures available to residents of and visitors to Cupertino.
Welcome to The Better Part, a program that encompasses a diverse spectrum of topics important to our community, which we hope will both inform and entertain you. We invite you to sit back and enjoy the program.
Joining me today is Mike Sanchez, Chairman of the Fine Arts Commission of Cupertino. He's going to tell us about the many hidden treasures for lovers of beauty and creativity in the city of Cupertino. He'll also tell us about a catalog of these works put together by the Fine Arts Commission and something about the other efforts of the Commission to promote local creativity in the city. Welcome, Mike, to The Better Part.
Thank you so much, Bev. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's talk a little bit about the mission of the Cupertino Fine Arts Commission. What does it actually do?
That's a great question, a great place to start. What I'll do is I'll read the words that the city uses on the city website because I think they're important. The purpose is to foster, encourage, and assist in the realization, preservation, and advancement of fine arts for the benefit of the citizens of Cupertino. So it's a broad mission that we have.
That sounds like a lot of activities can be involved in that. So what are some of the activities of the Commission?
We have a set of things that we do on a regular basis. Probably the best known in Cupertino is the Emerging and Distinguished Artist Awards. So what we do is encourage artists who live or practice their art in Cupertino or who are students in Cupertino to submit their portfolios each year. So we have the Emerging Artist category for under 30 years old, and then the Distinguished Artist category for over 30 years old. And what we do then each year is promote choose a winner and promote that winner and announce the winner in a particular event each year to celebrate the arts produced by individual citizens in Cupertino. Another activity we have, probably the other very important activity that we participate in, is in identifying public art in Cupertino and providing for the development, the creation, the development, and the construction of public art, primarily in commercial developments within the city limits. So for example, when a new construction project goes into place, we're involved in selecting and identifying the artwork that the public will then visit and enjoy. And probably the third primary activity we have is in partnership with schools or the UFRAT Gallery at De Anza College, for example, in promoting exhibitions, student exhibitions, faculty exhibitions, citizen exhibitions, and then exhibitions of artists that come from many, many places to show their art to the public in Cupertino.
Are there many artists in Cupertino or in this general area?
In my opinion, there are a lot of creative people living in Cupertino and Sunnyvale and Mountain View. And one of the ways I think you can tell that is true is the number of art schools and tutoring opportunities, especially for children and students. So if you broaden art to include categories beyond fine art for music and sculpture and performing arts, there's a lot of that happening in this area. It's a very creative place to live, I think.
That's really interesting because most people think of Silicon Valley as a place of technicians and engineers. And I know that every year, once a year, they have this day when you can visit artist studios, and I've done that on occasion. And it's really interesting to see them at work. But what is the city's selection criteria for the public art?
That's a great question, and it's a very involved process. Typically, you have forms to fill out and a process to go through to get from idea to building the actual artwork itself and placing it in a location and a development that can be viewed by the public. And typically what the developer will do is dedicate 1/4% of the cost of the development to a particular artwork, up to a limit of about $100,000, though we do accept artwork that is valued higher than that. But typically the art and the scale of the art and the development time, the materials, is based on the scale of the development itself. For example, a large structure or a large shopping center will typically have a more prominent piece of artwork itself. But I'll read the criteria for you because that's very interesting. What we look at when we're determining the appropriateness of a piece of art for the city, the most important one, and the one that's probably the most subjective, of course, is aesthetics. But it has to have lasting value. It's got to be receptive to the public, respectful, stimulating. It's got to be interesting. It's got to be something that you're going to want to spend time with, and perhaps taking the time to have a personal interpretation of that artwork itself. And the idea here is that it contributes to the city's personality, the city's character, and reaches the public emotionally. And so that's a very subjective criteria. We also look at the artist's background. We look at their track record, their portfolio, their history in designing and installing public works in their past, especially large-scale artwork rather than typically small-scale. We're looking at objects typically that are 5, 6, 7, 10, 20 feet tall, and that can be seen from a distance, and again can be appreciated by large numbers of people who may go there. Style is another subjective aspect of what we look at. Much of what you see in Silicon Valley, in Sunnyvale, Mountain View, and Cupertino, I think reflects the high-tech culture. So a lot of the artwork you see is abstract or modern, what we might call modern art. And we're open to many, many styles. It doesn't have to be modern art that you see all the time. Permanence, so the materials, the ability to be maintained for future generations is really important. We look at also liability. It's got to meet safety requirements. It's got to be a structure that maintains its integrity over years and in lots of weather conditions, and is a safe place for families and children and people to gather around. Access, so it has to meet American disability requirements for proximity, that you can get close to it. Right. Duplication, so we're looking for one-of-a-kind works, something that can be talked about and is seen as unique for Cupertino. And then preference as well. We look at artists who are living in the Bay Area. We give a preference to local artists typically.
Does it ever come up that an artist turns up an idea or a piece of art that's controversial?
That hasn't happened, at least that I've seen yet, and that would be interesting if it did. Typically when an artist comes to us with their design and they bring a scale model to the commissioners, they are experienced enough to know that public art can be controversial, and I think they're pretty careful about that. The 5 of us, there's Russell, Raji, Jesse, Diana, and myself, have those conversations when we do judging of the emerging artists and distinguished artists. We have that conversation when we're looking at public art. There's a fine line between controversy and offensiveness. Personally, I like art that is somewhat daring.
Yeah, something that people will talk
Yes,
about. Or,
yes, yes. And so there are some artwork, there are some pieces that we'll look at that did cause a little bit of controversy, but I think that's a good thing. And what you often see in galleries, for example, in the UFRAT gallery, there was a great show recently that we were involved in that sometimes in a gallery setting, you're able to see artwork that does draw at your heartstrings or cause you even anger and resistance. Public art, I think we need to be more careful about that. And to answer your question again, I haven't seen anything so far that has caused controversy. I wonder
Yeah.
if that'll happen at some
and
point.
it's going to be there for a long
That's
time,
right.
so you want to be careful about that. One of the things that you didn't mention when you were going through all the criteria was cost. Who does the city pay for it? Does the artist pay for
The
it?
developer typically does. The developer of that property typically does. Now there are public locations where you'll see art where the city gets involved directly. For example, in the Civic Center or the library, etc. That's a different structure, though we use some of the same criteria to look at that artwork. Typically, the artwork in Cupertino that you see is in a commercial development of some kind.
So you mentioned that the commission sometimes provides grants to the artists. Is that for a whole work or just to support their continuing work?
Just to support the particular work, or sometimes to support a particular event. For example, one of the great organizations in Cupertino is the Fine Arts League. That's actually a group of prominent artists in Cupertino who hold events and have their own competition and have kind of a lively community of people who are doing fine art, and they will, on occasion, apply for a grant that we will then cover for a particular event.
Tell us a little bit about the awards that the commission gives, like the Distinguished Artists or the Team Awards. That's really interesting.
We're actually looking at broadening that offering in the next year or the coming cycle. We just finished this year's cycle of choosing a distinguished artist and choosing an emerging artist, and that will be announced in September at Quinlan Community Center at a Fine Arts League event called the Fall Festival. But the criteria that we use and the artists that we see, it's one of the most enjoyable parts of the job to have, especially for me personally, the emerging artists, those people under 30 that again either live in Cupertino or practice their art in Cupertino or residents or go to school in Cupertino to submit their portfolios. And that's where we play the role of judge and jury based on our criteria to find what we think is somebody that needs to be recognized. And then the distinguished artist, somebody that's more experienced, somebody that has had a portfolio for a number of years, has been practicing art, maybe formally trained in fine arts. We look at that as well. But now we're looking at, and this is exciting to me too, is looking at younger artists and maybe breaking that into three pieces where we're looking, let's say, at middle school children or elementary school children or high school children, and then distinguished artists, and then emerging artists, and then distinguished artists in kind of a hierarchy to especially encourage kids to show their art. When I was in 6th grade, I had I entered a piece of art in a school art contest. It changed my life. I came in 2nd place, and it encouraged me to be an artist. And I think when you look at the children of Cupertino and what they want to do with their art and practice their art, I think part of our job is to encourage that.
I think that's a wonderful point because an award like that or recognition like that can just be a wonderful boost to a
Yes,
young person
absolutely.
who's just starting out or thinking about doing that kind of thing. So what other things does the Fine Arts Commission participate in?
Well, one of my favorite things, I think, is our partnership with the UFRAT Gallery. And one of the nice things about the city of Cupertino, it has a dedicated gallery on the De Anza College campus. And there are a number of shows that cycle through there. Diana Argabright, who is the director there, does a wonderful job of selecting art, selecting artists, and then opening it up to students and the public. For example, right now in the last 30 days or so, the gallery has shown student artwork, De Anza student artwork, and faculty artwork from the Cupertino, or I should say the Foothill De Anza district. And the artwork is fantastic. You can imagine that those that are teaching art in that community college district and the students themselves show fantastic work. There were a couple of shows as well in the last year. One was called, was covered in the New York Times, as a matter of fact, was called War and Healing. And so a number of artists were brought in to depict aspects of war. The positive and the negative aspects of the effects that war has on individuals and communities and nations. And to spend time in that gallery and look at that is something that the Commission really encourages. We typically are on the periphery as well for events like the Shakespeare Festival in Cupertino and the Cherry Blossom Festival in Cupertino, which is a wonderful showing of, for the Japanese community, of all kinds of art, not just fine art itself.
I saw a wonderful exhibit at the Euphrat Gallery about the immigrants to Angel Island. It was very heartrending and touching. The photographs were just wonderful. I noticed you have a nice book there, which is called the Public Art Catalog. Now, how did that come about?
Well, one of the things that we've looked at as commissioners is organizing artwork in Cupertino so that we can promote to the public the fact that there are works of art in Cupertino that you might just drive by every day and not see in front of commercial establishments. And so what we've done with the catalog now that we're constructing is gather about a little over a dozen pieces of art scattered throughout Cupertino. They'll be indicated on a map and in the catalog itself, which we will make available in the public library and in City Hall. We're going to have copies for the mayor to present to VIP visitors or to take with him when he travels, to show in one place these works of art, promote the artists that created them, and then show the locations where you can go and see them and visit them. Sometimes we might be in a park or a shopping center or, as I say, driving by and not really notice the artwork or know the story behind the artwork.
But this way they can look it up and
so,
find out all
that's
that.
right. So in addition to the hardcover books, we're going to create a PDF document that you can download from the city's website, which has a complete description of what the Fine Arts Commission does and describes what it takes to work and volunteer for the Commission, and describes will describe the artwork itself in that document.
So will people be able to buy copies of the catalog if they want to put on their coffee table, or give themselves to visitors that come?
That's probably possible. I would assume, I would hope that a lot of people download the PDF for free and print that out. That we think is the easiest way to kind of enjoy the experience of the catalog, or get one from the library, go see one at the City Hall.
Well, before we run out of time, I want you to tell us about some of the art that's in the catalog, and particularly about your favorite pieces in the city.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Probably the best known artwork in public art work in Cupertino is on the corner of De Anza and Stevens Creek and the Cali Mill site. It's called Perspectives. It's huge. It was created by Roger Berry. You can see it from the street. It's within kind of a park structure next to a hotel and some residences, has a fountain around it. That's one of my favorites simply because it's so prominent. It looks good in the daytime and it looks good at night, and in the catalog you'll see images from both. Another one, maybe the most popular and maybe the also as well known in Cupertino, were two pieces of art created by Georgia Gerber. One is in front of the library. It's called The Dancers. It's a bronze sculpture, and then inside the quad of the library itself, the reader that shows a boy reading a book with a rabbit next to him.
Yes.
Interestingly, when we took that photograph, and I believe there's a picture in the catalog of it, there was a girl sitting behind the boy, also reading a book on a bench, only it was a digital book that she was reading in the same pose as the reader himself. There are other works of art. Another well-known piece is in Memorial Park. It's called The Guardians, and it's to memorialize war veterans. That was done by W. Stanley Proctor. It's a piece that's very, very familiar, I think, to most visitors of
Memorial. The face of the soldier on that is just very interesting.
Yeah, reflects real people.
Close up, and there's a close up in the catalog
Yeah.
of that piece.
It's a haunting piece, and one of the things that we commissioners do, and I think the public does as well, is when you spend time with a public work like that, it affects you. It becomes part of the place. It becomes part of the experience of visiting that place, and I think that's really important. There's another great piece by Joyce Sue at the Aloft Hotel on De Anza Boulevard called Message Blade. It's beautiful. At night especially, it lights up, it changes colors. It has a binary digital message on it that is, I won't tell you what the translation is, but it's a beautiful artwork that, again, if you're driving by you might not see, but if you visit the hotel, it's right out in the patio area there, that, and you can spend time looking at it. There's also a number of works, Glass Flow by Ulrich Packer on De Anza Boulevard, that sits in front of, I believe, one of the Apple buildings now across the street from Apple, current Apple headquarters. Another one on the corner of Wolf Road and Stevens Creek called Little Tree by Brad Howe. A lot of people are familiar with that when they stop at that intersection. Cockatiels is another one that is one of my favorites. It's a very delicate work showing birds in flight. I like that one a lot. There's a very whimsical one on the wall. We don't know the artist's name, but it's on the wall of Armadillo Willie's, a restaurant on the corner, near the corner of De Anza and Stevens Creek, that shows what that particular corner looked like when the Cali Brothers feed and grain operation was there. And it's one of those pictures where you look closely and you see a cat sitting there, and you see it's a mural of a billboard. So it looks very, very realistic in illustration style. And then at Cupertino City Hall, there are a couple of works as well. One is by Scott Sayre that depicts the history of Cupertino in a mural. And I'm kind of a student historian, and I love that piece as well because it shows scenes from the last couple of hundred years of Cupertino, from Spanish days, and even before that, Native Americans that lived here, all the way through to Silicon Valley time now. It's interesting too that you can argue that it's artwork or that it's not artwork, but the public fountains at Civic Center in front of the library.
Yes, I noticed that in the catalog. They call that art, and they show it with children running through the fountains.
Yeah,
there.
That's an important point. I think another thing about artwork is, can you experience it? And that's a perfect example of experiential art. You can run through the fountains. Kids do it in the summertime to get wet and to have fun. And I've never seen children play at that fountain that weren't laughing and happy and having a good time. And they're just thinking of it as, I get to get wet in the water.
Yeah, I could just spend time sometimes just watching them and the things they're doing with the water. They just have so much fun. Well, before we run out of time, is there any other artwork that you particularly want to mention?
Yeah, there are a couple of pieces in development right now. One is in particular near Valco Shopping Center that's in development right now that we call the Rose Bowl project. So part of what the city is doing there in that development is inviting people to spend time in kind of a small town environment where you have shops and residences and a park-like atmosphere near where Valco is right now. And so there'll be some public art there that you'll be able to spend time with, be surrounded by water structure. And when that's done, we're going to make that part of the next version of the catalog. So the catalog itself is really going to be kind of a dynamic, evolving thing, document that every year, every couple of years, we'll update it to show how public art in Cupertino is something that the city takes seriously and that we want citizens to be aware of and come and experience and come and enjoy themselves.
What about the new town center that they're building with the pedestrian walkways? Will there be?
Yes, there'll be work there, and I think it'd be interesting to see what Apple does with their new headquarters.
I think Apple would actually encourage you to list their building itself
the building
as
itself.
an artwork, but that remains to be seen.
Yes.
Well, thanks, Mike, for being with us today. We really learned a lot, and I'm sure a lot of the residents are going to go and hunt out some of these art treasures that you talked about today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, too.
And we hope you in the audience enjoyed finding out about the free art available to you in Cupertino. Tune in again next week to meet another interesting guest. Bye for now.